McDonald's outfit dating experiment. Check this out.
In that Ferrari or that Rolls Royce, it has a big impact when you get to that nightclub.
There's a study that was done, I think, in the early 90s, where they manipulated the status, the attire of men and women into one of three different types: high status, medium, and some t-shirt or McDonald's. And then they asked men and women, would you go out for a coffee with this guy? Would you go out on dinner? Would you have sex with him? Would you marry him? And across all 6 levels of relationships, the status of the attire of a man had a profound effect on the likelihood of the woman saying yes. Higher the status, the more likely she said yes. That same manipulation on women had 0 effect on men.
Yeah, okay. So we have this conversation all the time about how what men and women want and what men and women respect and what men and women seek is different. This is fascinating to me because it shows that, in fact, and there's numerous studies to support what he's saying, that women do appreciate status. Now, what do we mean by status? Well, what he's saying, it's not about the car per se. It's not about the house. It's not about the outfit on an individual basis. But what all of that speaks to is that you are stable and secure. Again, you are someone that she can lean on. You are someone that's going to provide and protect. You are someone that's going to provide that security so that if she decides she wants to work, great. If she decides she doesn't want to work, that's also an option because there you are providing that stability. It's just a sign of a guy who has it together. It's also a sign of a guy that's made good decisions, because the guy who's got the house or has the nice car, in most cases, barring the fact that maybe he's a guy that grew up in a rich family and got a hand-me-down from mommy or daddy, that happens. But in the majority of cases, these are people that worked really hard, that have a strong work ethic, that are ambitious, and who have made positive decisions to not engage in distraction and meaningless stuff, and instead to focus on that self-improvement and on doing something that they knew would be a magnet for women and a magnet for respect and a magnet for recognition in society. So it's absolutely true. Now, what's interesting about the dynamic is that if you flip it, guys don't care about a woman's status. And I've said this on this show. I said that a guy would be more likely to want to, marry a girl who worked at Target, who worked at McDonald's, who worked at wherever, and she was nice and she was pleasant to be around and she had a good personality and she had a peaceful energy. They will choose that any day of the week over the CEO, who's impossible and a nightmare to be around, because that CEO title is not something that they care about. They don't care about your status because they are a masculine guy isn't looking for you to provide for them. They're not looking for you to make them feel secure. They want to do that. They can do it and they want to do it because they view it as their role and their responsibility to do that for you. So they don't need that from you. They need other things from you. So that's not even on the list. This is an interesting conversation back to back with Fresh and Fit. There's a round table and there's a girl on there that's talking about socioeconomic status. And the reason I pulled this clip of her is because she's very representative of what the modern world tells women. And now you have these women that are unable to process the reality of these differences between men and women and what men and women want. And she's a perfect, I think, manifestation of that. So let's listen to what she says at 5613.
Economic status, when someone is a billionaire, millionaire,
yeah,
they're not going to want someone who is on a different socioeconomic status.
That's incorrect. You're looking at it from a female lens.
You're talking about a marriage standpoint or relationship standpoint?
Men marry down all the time.
Long-term standpoint?
Yes, men marry down all the time.
Yeah. Okay, and they're going to let the person continue on the path that they are, or they're going to
Here's the thing.
Men
marry a girl typically hoping she'll never change. Women marry a man hoping he will change. We're very different. What you just mentioned just now with socioeconomic status, etc. What you just gave was the female perspective that socioeconomic status matters. For men, typically it doesn't. This is why a guy that's a king or a sultan or whatever will marry a girl that's a lowly peasant. Like, men date down and marry down all the time.
Okay, so a king or a sultan will marry to have sex with someone that is a lower socioeconomic status. Okay, but someone who is of a higher socioeconomic status is going to require someone else who is of a higher socioeconomic status to pair with, to mate with, to partner with for life.
Justin, you're a multimillionaire. Do you care about a woman's socioeconomic status?
Nope.
Okay. So, and Justin's answer, we had Justin here, obviously, to talk about some of this stuff. This is a reality. But do you see how she's struggling? Like, she's like so sure of her point that if someone is of a certain socioeconomic status, be they man or woman, they're going to want someone of that same or similar socioeconomic status, be they man or woman. And he's saying, no, you're looking at it through a female lens. You're looking at it as a woman who, if you made $100,000 a year, you would want your guy to make $100,000 plus a year. That's true. Guys don't look at it like that, again, because we view our roles differently, women and men. And I think, I was thinking about this as I was just listening to this now, and I said, well, why? I wonder why it's so hard for these women to process this. And I think it's because it's a really difficult pill to swallow, because many of them, she looks a little bit older to me. She looks like she's maybe in her 30s somewhere, a little bit more mature than some of the other girls on the panel. Nothing wrong with that. Just looks like she's got some maturity to her. Women, oftentimes in modern society in their 30s, have built their whole lives around believing that that status is important to guys. They've done it all. They've been told by modern feminism. They've been told by television and movies and magazines that this strong, empowered woman is what's desired. And they've made choices as a result. They've climbed that corporate ladder. And as a result of there being only 24 hours in a day, they've neglected other things like, maybe seriously dating and focusing on a relationship and thinking about moving those childbearing years, more into your 20s than in your 30s when your fertility is peak. They've made decisions based off of that model of saying that socioeconomic status is important to men. So when somebody confronts them and says, it's just not, it's a really tough pill to swallow, because they have to think about, well, if that's true, what have I been doing here? And maybe that's why I'm single. Maybe that's why it's been challenging, because maybe I'm prioritizing the stuff that's not important to men and not prioritizing the stuff that is important to men. Have I done something wrong here? And as we all know, in life as humans, it's hard to look back because you can't fix what you did already, right? And it's hard to do that. It's hard to look back and be like, oh, did I make a mistake here? So that's why it's so hard for these women to swallow and process this information. But it's 100% true. And I would ask you in the chat, I'm going to come back to the chat in a second, Tyler. So super chats, if you're coming, let us know, because I want to come over and see what your thoughts are. But I would ask you, just go around and ask people that you know. Ask a bunch of guys, ask a bunch of women, and I will guarantee that you're going to hear almost unanimously that guys aren't prioritizing that they're not going to care if you're making 30K, 60K, 120K, because they're, again, not looking at you as the person who is going to be the leader of that house, ideally. They're not looking at, oh, well, should I marry this woman because I need her to provide and protect? No, not at all. So that's not even on the top 10, that's not even there. Whereas for the woman, that may be number one, right? That may be number two. It's right there. It's a very, and again, I think one of the other reasons why this is all very difficult to swallow is because we now live in a society that refuses to acknowledge that men and women are different. We can't even acknowledge that men are men and women are women. That's hard enough in 2022 to have that conversation without having oh no, there's 755 genders. And I mean, it's absurd what's going on. But even if you get to the sane people who say men, women, they also oftentimes will then refuse to acknowledge that they're different. They're hardwired differently. We talked about this the other day. There are intrinsic differences that are not as a result of society, but are intrinsic due to your gender, due to your biology, due to being male or female. And if you ignore all of that, you start to see the world as, oh, it's just a bunch of people who want the same things. That is not true. And that's oftentimes why you have this happening in dating, because now you have, a clash. You have a refusal to actually hear from the other person what is a priority and what is important to that other person. Now, if you don't care, fine, but then you just may be alone for longer because you're not paying attention to what the other sex really cares about. So then it's on you if you choose to ignore. If you want to watch the full episode, you're going to click right here. And if you want to ask me a question one-on-one, you want to do a one-on-one FaceTime with a group of your friends, whatever you want, you need to download Connect right now. Click right here and let's get talking.